This is the ATL Fan Podcast. Today we get into that Thursday night game that I don't really want to mention it by name, but we're talking Falcons and Eagles. After that, we have Bill Bender coming on the show, a national college football writer from Sporting News, to talk about week 2 in college football. Then we get David's Burger's opinion on the Georgia-South Carolina game. This is Football Friday, and we're having football for real here on the ATL Fan Podcast, which is through fansfavoritefan.com. Well, you guys know I do a lot of advertising for Spaces, and this time I'm actually at a new location, still in Midtown Atlanta, but a couple blocks north at Colony Square at Spaces' newest location that is still under construction, but still the same friendly folks, and they're looking to, they're excited over here to see when it all gets completed. And I have the regional manager here, Jessica Woods, to tell us more about it.
Thank you, Alex, for the opportunity to expand on the services that we offer here at Spaces Colony Square. We're currently located in the 400 building of Colony Square in Suite 300. We are under construction, as Alex mentioned before, with the other 2 floors expecting to be finished about mid-2019. We currently offer a combination of private office space and shared office space that are both available for move-in today. We're offering flexible lease terms and a ton of networking opportunities. Come in and mention Alex for a free 5-day test drive to just see and fill out the space. You can check us out at www.spacesworks.com or give us a call at the center at 404-870-9000. Thank you, Alex.
Well, thank you, and I will put the link to Spaces on the show description, so be sure to check out Spaces Colony Square. You know, it's one of those things that you think of Atlanta sports, and it's hard to associate failure with the Atlanta sports teams recently. Because, I mean, you have the Braves that are going to the playoffs. You have Atlanta United always selling out Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And for a while, it was kind of like Atlanta was the laughable city because you had major sports teams that were middle of the road but can never get it done on the big stage. And I try to be positive. I don't try to be negative all the time, but unfortunately this is one of these mornings where we have to be a little bit negative on the Atlanta Falcons because they lost to the Eagles last night 18-12. That's like a high-scoring baseball game. Wouldn't you say so, Anthony?
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And just pretty much going over how the game went, pretty much between the Eagles and the Falcons, with the slow start, no touchdowns till the third quarter. And with Nick Foles really not at his best in that game, for the Falcons to, of course, do what they did in that game, it was definitely hurting for Falcons fans. And just I would say even football fans who, if you just really like football.
Yeah, this is September football at its finest because it is one of the frustrating things too. I feel like that weather delay had a big deal on I won't say the outcome of the game, but it definitely had a big deal of like the slow start.
Yeah. So I definitely think the weather delay was more to the Eagles' credit more the Eagles' credit of play because the Eagles are the Super Bowl reigning champs. And, of course, with nights like these on opening nights, you sometimes can get distracted between last season's accomplishments going into that opening game. And I thought pretty much the weather delay helped settle the team down and get ready for the game. Even with Malcolm Jenkins, the Eagles safety, he spoke about pretty much how the delay was a help for him and the team to get ready to focus in on the game. Just because, of course, as a team, you go into the game looking to start off your season right, with also knowing that you're the champ. So it's a different type of mindset, but also exciting at the same time. And I think that weather delay definitely worked towards the Eagles' credit and led to the Falcons' failure in this game.
If you're wondering who that is, if you don't recognize that voice, that is Anfernee Patterson from the Atlanta Voice is joining me today here on the ATL Fan Podcast. Welcome, friends. I know it sucked last night watching the Falcons game, especially if you're a Georgia Bulldog fan, because like you went into Saturday and you saw what like well-executed offensive football looks like, and now you go and you watch NBC get the delayed game, and then you see how bad offensive football or not executed offensive football looks like. Honestly, I feel like Julio Jones is really going to get it, especially if you just watch the highlights from Get Up on ESPN or SportsCenter, because Julio Jones, in my opinion, I feel real bad for the guy this morning. Because, I mean, the guy had, let me pull up his stats. Yeah, the guy had over 10 receptions for 169 yards. And I'm getting this information off of ESPN.com. And he had some really huge catches, especially getting them across the 50-yard line, getting them into the red zone, and then just to see him go out like that, that was really sad.
Yes, of course, we all went to the game. We kind of knew with the way the season ended for the Falcons last year, the main thing was converting in the red zone, mainly converted touchdowns within the red zone. And, of course, with Julio Jones, we know he's one of the top receivers in the league. He can put up stats. He can get 100-yard games, but he often has times getting in the end zone as well. That can be due to scheme. That can just be due to what they call, and just maybe Julio himself. And with this game, of course, I went into the game. I actually predicted Julio to have a big game, and of course he had that with 10 receptions for 169 yards. But I also predicted that he wouldn't score a touchdown, mainly because the Falcons offense, I didn't think they could get over that hump, even though they stated they practiced all for it through training camp and preseason, mainly because one of the things about opening nights, this isn't training camp or preseason, it's the actual game. So things change within that environment and just within the game itself. So while that game was going, I knew that the Falcons were going to have trouble early on. Pretty much just by how the game was going. But I honestly thought later on within the game when the defense was able to get the offense going, I thought they were going to get over that hump. But unfortunately, this is why we're here today, to talk about that.
Yes. We don't usually have a lot of these, though, to be honest with you. And again, to Philly's credit, they used I don't know if it's either Philly or the Philly special. I know that play absolutely drives Patriots fans like my brother absolutely crazy hearing that. I mean, it's cool and everything like that, and that's football nowadays, offensive football nowadays, where you want to do a lot of trickery. Mm-hmm. Like in college football, this is like the most time. Last year in college football, that was the most time I saw so many trick plays, and Philadelphia set the tone that we might be seeing a lot more of that stuff this year, that it hasn't gone away from last year.
Yes, I thought that was something interesting in the game also, with that trick play. Of course, the famous trick play in the Super Bowl with Trey Burton to one of the Eagles receivers. Patriots also trying to do the same thing, but not quite as well. So I know some Patriot fans out here hate talking about that and seeing that play.
It seems like, though, Baker Mayfield and Nick Foles are saying, hey, quarterbacks can catch balls too. even though I'm pretty sure majority of the quarterbacks don't want to catch balls, they just want to throw balls down the field. I don't see Matt Ryan doing that, honestly. I could see I saw Tom Brady doing that, because it's like Tom Brady's one of those guys, he'll do anything for the team.
Of course.
So, but I don't see Matt Ryan doing it. And this sucks for Matt Ryan, because the last play, which obviously was a given to him, because it was kind of like God was giving him chance after chance after chance, because they went for a fourth down, didn't make it. They got a penalty called, and honestly, the penalty really doesn't matter at this point what was called, but it's like the Falcons had that chance to do another shot to the end zone, and they did. Me and you looked at the film before we recorded, and I was just like, he should have rifled it to the end zone. At least give him a chance where he could have fell on the ball, or just don't extend that body up in the air. But instead, he threw that kind of fade pass, that like 3-point shot to the end zone, and there's just no way Julio would have got that. There's no way you would have called that in college. There's no way that play could happen. It kind of reminds me of Des Bryant with the Cowboys in the playoff games when they were playing the Packers a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so of course we both watched the highlight tape. As you can see, we definitely believe that Matt Ryan should have bulleted that pass, just because floating it to the outside, it definitely gave the defensive player a chance to make a play on the ball. And just within that game, in that situation, you want to get a pass to where only your receiver can get it. And I know that was one thing. When I was watching the game, I saw Julio had no chance whatsoever to come down with that ball inside the end zone.
Yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, look it up, because, well, it's a great catch by Julio, except it's not in bounds. I mean, it's the most athletic catch you're ever going to see that's out of bounds. But Anfernee, it's the weekend. The weekend is here. You got
this is the weekend.
Hopefully, because I know a lot of people are going to be sour about the Falcons and just NFL and general. But hopefully, Kirby Smart can make up for it in Columbia this weekend.
Of course. We definitely looking forward to the Dogs traveling down to South Carolina. Take on
and
the
Tech
Gamecocks.
is playing South Florida. Mm-hmm. That should be an interesting matchup down in Tampa.
This should be a very interesting matchup.
So, also high school football is going on. You're covering a game tonight?
Of course. I'm covering the Mays versus Hughes game tonight. It's at Lakewood Stadium in Atlanta.
It is Atlanta. It is Atlanta.
Atlanta, because I know.
Have you been to Lakewood before?
This is actually my first time.
I've driven by there before, and it looks like a pretty nice stadium, but the neighborhood around it, I'm just like, I don't know. I'll just put it that way. I want to put that in the most nicest terms possible, because my church has actually done charity work at one of those churches off that road before. So.
Oh, okay. But I'm definitely excited about the game. High school football on Fridays doesn't get any better than that. I always watched the Mays and Hughes highlights on growing up on Fox 5 and just various news outlets. So it will definitely
They weren't
be
always
great.
called Mays, right? They were another school before that. It was like Atlanta something.
I'm not
totally sure on that.
Too sure.
Hey, if there's someone that goes to Mays High School, and if I'm right about that, which I thought I was, but I might not be. But if Mays, if your high school is another name, put that in the comment section. Put that in the comment section wherever you see this podcast. So
let me know.
yes, let us know because we're very curious right now. But yeah, a lot of other great football going on here at Football Friday. I did a disservice, but thank you, friends, for checking out the ATL Fan Podcast. I'm Alex Berger. Alongside me is Anfernee Patterson, who's joining us from the Atlanta Voice. Also, you're a student at GSU, right?
Yes, go Panthers. We just got a good win versus Kennesaw State last Thursday. Travel on the road to play the Wolfpack this weekend. Who's the
Wolfpack?
We're playing the North Carolina State Wolfpack.
Oh, dang. Well, good luck to our good friend Sean Elliott with that game.
Yes. Good luck to Sean Elliott. Good luck to quarterback Dan. We look forward to a great game. Bring back the W, Panthers.
Yeah, Sean Elliott always gives us a good soundbite. He even invited me out to practice in his press conference.
What?
Yeah. I mean, did you hear he's like, you should come out to practice?
Of course.
That's an invite right there.
Yeah, that's an invite.
Then I talked to Allison, the SID, and that was a totally different story when I talked to her. But if Allison, if you're listening, we love you, Allison.
Of course.
You do a great job at Georgia State keeping our media people regulated.
Of course, wonderful person. I love Miss Allison. Definitely met her at the press conference last Thursday. She's definitely a wonderful person, respectable in her duties.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for listening, and we're about to get you talking to Bill Bender. So got a real fun show for you today. We have Bill Bender on from Sporting News, and we're going to have David Berger, his thoughts on the South Carolina game. So thanks for joining us today here on the ATL Fan Podcast. We are at fansfavoritefan.com. Check out Fans Favorite Fan, especially if you can't get score updates, go to fansfavoritefan.com because we got you covered throughout the whole weekend. Mm-hmm. Now we're just going to transition the show, and we're going to bring on Bill Bender from Sporting News, and this is the first time the ATL Fan Podcast has had a nationally syndicated writer on. He is the national writer on Sporting News for college football, so we're going to talk to him about week 1, going into week 2, all the fun things that have happened in college football in the past 2 weeks. So definitely grateful to have Bill on the show. This is a fun conversation that we're about to get into with Bill Bender. Well, here on the ATL Fan Podcast, we're definitely grateful to have Bill Bender on the show today. Writes for Sporting News, and he is the national college football writer for Sporting News. So we just want to welcome Bill to the ATL Fan Podcast. Bill, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, and always good to talk about college football, no matter what corner of the country it is. So I appreciate it.
No problem. Now, obviously, you're up in Ohio, so I have to ask you: have you had a Urban Meyer sighting yet?
No, he was at practice this week, but they shielded him from the media, so we didn't get a chance to see Coach Meyer. I think it's been an interesting couple months here, obviously, with that, but I think what you saw Saturday was it certainly has not affected the product on the field. The Buckeyes are still very good, very talented, capable of pretty much beating anybody they play. And I think that'll carry over no matter when Meyer gets back, if he gets back. And obviously, with the TCU game coming up, that'll be the next big test.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you this, since we are the ATL Fan Podcast here in Atlanta. You had the opportunity to come down for the SEC Media Days here in Atlanta, and I just want to get your impressions of what you thought about the city, if you got time to explore the city a little bit, or were you just in your hotel room just cranking away articles? Because I see that you've put out pretty much an article a day this week.
Yeah, I've been to Atlanta a few times in the last 2 years.
That's right. You covered the national championship, right?
Yeah, I was down for the title game. I was down for the kickoff game last year and the SEC championship game. And I thought it was the pros and cons of moving SEC Media Days to Atlanta. I think having the College Football Hall of Fame there, it was a nice stroke because you have that, and coupled with, Atlanta being one of the best cities in the world as far as college football fandom, I think it was all added up nicely. But I still do like the small town charm of places like Hoover and, obviously like Athens, Georgia, and the places that make college football what it is. So both ways, I thought it was outstanding. SEC did a fine job of putting on the event, and you'll be hard pressed to find a better stadium in the country than Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's so awesome to see.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, yeah, Mercedes-Benz Stadium is really awesome, especially if you get to go down on the field level and in the press box too. So, but yeah, I just want to get your impressions of the first week in college football, because to me, it wasn't a home run hitting week like it usually is in college football. Obviously, last year you had the huge matchup with Bama and Florida State. This year, you just had Michigan and Notre Dame, and none of those teams seem like they're going to be competing for anything high in college football. So, what were your impressions of Week 1? Just that Saturday, because I know Sunday and Monday were a little bit different.
Well, I think the Saturday you had Auburn and Washington. That was a big game, and I think the fact that the AP kept Washington in the top 10 was a signal that they said, "Hey, it's kind of a little bit of a consolation prize for stepping out and playing the big game like they did." I would disagree with you a little bit about Notre Dame, Michigan. I think Notre Dame could certainly compete for a college football playoff berth with that win. And their schedule, they play a lot of teams that are about as good as Michigan, and I think if they pile those wins up, they'll be fine. I think people are overreacting a little bit to Jim Harbaugh, as they always do. I always ask people when they say he's on the hot seat or he needs to go, then I say, well, who would you get to coach Michigan? And never hear a good answer. So I think that's quite a big overreaction. They do need to start winning some big games and run the football better in those games. But I don't think by any stretch that he's going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you about the second week, because obviously you have two big headliner games here in our region of the country with Clemson and going against Texas A&M, and you also have Georgia going against South Carolina. So what's your impressions of Week 2 so far?
No, it's going to be fun. Those are the two big-ticket games. I think we have our editor will be covering South Carolina, Georgia, with our offices being in Charlotte. So he's got an easier drive down there. Chance for South Carolina to really step out and win the big game. I don't think they will, but I think they'll hang around, and it'll be fun. And I think if Georgia wins that game convincingly, it would be basically a warning shot to the rest of the SEC East that it's going to be a while before you take over.
Right.
Because I don't know if you feel this way. I feel like I'd be interested to hear your take on. I think South Carolina is by far the second best team in the SEC East, unless I'm kind of monitoring Florida as well. I think Florida, they didn't play anybody last week, so I'm kind of reserving judgment on them for now.
I do feel like South Carolina is probably the team to beat right now, just from a standpoint of I feel like they're more established than Florida. I feel like Florida this year is in somewhat of a rebuilding mode, but it's kind of like it's one of those things that we don't know right now, and I feel like November will sort everything out.
Oh, for sure. And, Georgia is a very good, very stable program right now, and they're pulling in a lot of talent. And, one of the things with college football this year, and I was joking with my buddies about it, and as you know, I live up here in Central Ohio. I said, when you talk about contenders, I really believe the true list of national championship contenders you could probably put it on one hand. And I would say it like this. It'd be Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Georgia. And then I think once you get on that second hand, whether you're talking about Auburn or Penn State or,
Right.
I know I mentioned Notre Dame, you have to start making some convincing arguments before I get there on those teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just talk to you about just to get your thoughts and opinions on Clemson and Georgia, just from a standpoint that they're going to be on the big stage this weekend, but they've just recruited the heck out of the state of Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should. I mean, Georgia's such a good state, man. You have so much talent there. I think Clemson is a team that you got to almost treat them like an SEC heavyweight if you're an SEC fan, because that's what they are. I mean, they have developed a reputation in basically a decade. They've gone from everybody used to use that word Clemsoning. Now they'll walk into your house and beat you down, and they do it pretty convincingly. So I think Texas A&M could hang around for a half, but I just think depth matters. It's more of a project. They've got a long way to go before they are actually in that conversation with the teams like that I mentioned that are on that first hand.
Now with Georgia, obviously they're dominating the state of Georgia in recruiting. Do you feel like that? Do you think that on Saturday we're going to see that shift, or do you feel like that shift is already happened with the University of Georgia?
No, I mean, they're there. It's just they feel – I feel like Kirby essentially followed the model that Nick Saban had showed him in Tuscaloosa, which is, not the most exciting model, though I would make the argument that this year might be Alabama's most exciting team, which is that's bad news for everybody else. But I think he's put his own personal touch on it. Like, if you're Georgia, you want to be like Alabama, but you don't want to be Alabama. You have to have your own identity as a program.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think Kirby's done a pretty darn good job of that. I always tell people, I mean, when Jake Fromm threw that 80-yard touchdown in the championship game last year, I started writing the Georgia wins column, essentially. Like, it was over, and, Tua had other things to say, and I don't mean to bring that up on an Atlanta sportscast. But that's just telling you how ahead of schedule they were, essentially.
Right, absolutely. Because it was a shock to myself that Georgia was in the national championship last year. I mean, forget that it's like they lost the game. It was still like, wow, we're already here, and it seems like we have a chance to pull this thing out. Now, you saw Fields on Saturday a good bit, obviously, because they played Austin Peay. Do you feel like we're going to see Fields tomorrow at all?
Yeah, I'm sure they will. They'll find a way to use him. I mean, it's very reminiscent. I talked to Matt Stinchcomb about this last week of when they had DJ Shockley and David Green. I mean, that's one of those games where you wonder, can they make that happen? Yeah, I think they can use both. I still think Jake Fromm's probably going to take most of the snaps as the season wears on, but I do think there's going to be opportunities for Justin Fields to play. It's hard to keep him off the field when you have that much talent. It's the same. It's a little bit different at Clemson, I think, because at Clemson, I actually think Trevor Lawrence is going to take that job. He's going to, at some point this year, Trevor Lawrence is going to take over as the starting quarterback at Clemson. It's just, and that's the challenge for Dabo Swinney, is to, kind of manage the hype as that happens.
Right. Now let me ask you about Georgia Tech. They actually play a pretty decent out-of-conference game with South Florida. Where do you see the Yellow Jackets in this mix? Obviously, they're probably in that. They're a couple hands away from a championship. But where do you see the Yellow Jackets falling into the mix?
Well, they might not be ready to beat Clemson yet, but I don't think anybody in the ACC is. I mean, if anything happened in the ACC last year was that, Miami looked bad, Florida State looked bad. I thought Virginia Tech definitely, increased their profile a little bit. But, for Georgia Tech, I mean, there's an opportunity in that Coastal Division like everybody else. I mean, Pitt has a chance to do that this week. And Georgia Tech, obviously, not reaching a bowl game the last 2 years. I think that's where the starting point for them is. And then to see if they can make some noise within the division. And the thing about Paul Johnson's team is the second you kind of, I guess, rule them out or say, it's not going to happen is pretty much when they pop out a pretty good team. So, I mean, yeah, we're monitoring them very closely, and that's an interesting matchup for them this weekend.
Right, it is. Now, we don't have too much time left, but I want to ask you, because I've never had this opportunity before, and I saw that you mentioned it in a couple of your articles. What is it like to listen to the conference call on the different conferences that make their coaches conference call for the people that can't be at the press conference? Because is it fun? Is it boring? Or is it somewhere in between?
Probably somewhere in between because, in a teleconference setting, they have they know what's coming and they're going to say what they need to say. They don't step out a lot. I don't know if that's good or bad for the sport. I think most of the time it's just an effort to avoid too much bulletin board material. And, it's a way to, talk to coaches. So I try to work those during the week and, talk to as many voices as possible, get this pulse of the SEC and the Big Ten and the ACC. And we've got a pretty good Big 12 contributor and a pretty good Pac-12 contributor. So it's just trying to get the pulse all around the country.
Now, what are the games that you're looking forward to seeing this weekend?
No, like I said, Georgia and South Carolina will be good. Clemson, Texas A&M, a lot of people have their eyes on that. I'll be at Pitt, Penn State.
Okay.
One of those an undervalued in-state rivalry.
Right.
That I think Pitt will hang around. I don't know if they'll win, but they'll hang around in that game. And then, we go from there. So I am interested to see what Nebraska looks like. We didn't get to see their debut under Scott Frost last week, and they get to do that this week. So that's certainly another game I'll be keeping an eye on as long as, but like you said, Alex, it's not a good schedule this weekend. It's just not. It's a very, aside from those, in Georgia, that's a big deal, obviously. But I think nationwide, it's kind of a dud of a weekend.
It usually is like that for the second week, though.
Well, the second I say that, there'll probably be that huge upset that
right,
pops out.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, my buddies and I always joke about that. They say, the weekend that I always say, I tell my buddies, it'd be like, it'll be a pretty dull weekend, but that's when you get that first top 5 upset of the year, and that's when things kind of go off the rails. So we'll see, but it should be fun, and obviously at sportingnews.com we're having a lot of fun covering it.
Now, I remember listening to you on another podcast, and you talked about Texas, and obviously Texas lost to Maryland. Do you still feel that Texas is going to be that up-and-coming program?
Well, you had to bring that up, didn't you? I mean,
I just want to know if anything changed in the past couple days.
No, I always like telling people I do own when I'm wrong, and
it's only one game, though. That's the thing.
It is, but it's a pretty flagrant loss to lose to a Maryland team that they're clearly Texas should be better than, and to do that 2 years in a row. I do think, it definitely, to me, it says maybe I leaped in too early. But at the same time, I think it just increases the demand that they're going to need to have more success in Big 12 play and win some of these close games. It was a little bit of a shocker. That was of the 5 ranked teams that lost last weekend. I thought theirs was the worst loss, but I thought Florida State looked the worst. I don't know if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I would agree with that too, because you would think Willie Taggart, they would have an offense with Willie Taggart.
Right. They looked ill-prepared. They just looked disorganized. It was eye-opening on a lot of levels to see Florida State looked that bad. So, again, I won't bury them. I think Washington and Michigan got a chance to crawl back in. Michigan's just, it's the same thing that they need to basically run the ball better in big games. And until they do that, you're going to see the same old thing. So, they're a team that with their schedule, if they get hot, they'll be fine.
Right. Well, definitely appreciate you coming on the show, Bill. Where could we find your material at?
Yeah, I'm at BillBender92 at sportingnews.com. We have a Facebook page and all that stuff. And, hopefully we'll be able to do this a couple more times during the year. I know, it's obviously, like I said, I don't care who I'm talking to, what corner I'm talking to. It's a busy time of year, but it's also one that I always try to step back and remember what you're doing for a living and try to enjoy it.
Right. Well, Bill, you're always welcome to come on the show. So we'll definitely work through this stuff. So.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me on.
No problem. And where can we find you on social media?
I'm at BillBender92, and on Facebook, I think the same thing. Just if you look up Bill Bender on Facebook, your listeners will be able to find me there. And then, of course, at sportingnews.com, where we've got a good staff. We don't have a ton of bodies there, but we do what we can to cover the game. It's, in my opinion, the best game in the country. So we'll enjoy that and keep going.
All right. Well, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Now we thought we'd just get David Berger's opinion on the Georgia-South Carolina game. Here's David Berger. We just want to welcome to the ATL Fan Podcast. You are all familiar with David. David Berger is joining the show just for a minute to talk about the Georgia-South Carolina game this weekend. He's going to break it all down for us. David, I know you're a coach, so how's the weather been treating you recently?
It's actually not too bad. It's kind of cooled down slightly. Highs have been usually within the mid 80s, but overall it's been pretty good. It's been pretty overcast recently, so we've been really blessed this past week with some decent weather.
It seems like it's been pretty hot, and because I was outside today for a little while, and that might be an advantage for the Bulldogs going into essentially a swamp of Columbia, South Carolina.
Well, if anything, honestly, I think it would be an advantage to Carolina. But in all honesty, South Carolina fans say, oh, it's really hot in Columbia, which it is. I mean, the three hottest places in the universe are, the center of the sun, outside of the sun, and then Columbia, South Carolina. But at the same time, Athens is pretty hot too. So, if South Carolina fans want to talk and say, oh, well, they have the advantage because of the heat, that's not necessarily true. I think all these SEC teams are pretty much even-keeled when it comes to advantages playing in hot weather, especially here in the South, and especially because, these guys have indoor practice facilities, but they also have outdoor practice facilities as well. These teams are really well taken care of in terms of strength and conditioning and hydration. So I don't think really anybody has an edge in the heat. I think that's going to be, that's just going to be who can last longer and who's got better depth. And if you go with better depth and more experience and talented depth, you lean more towards Georgia. So if anything, yeah, I think Georgia would consider having an edge in the heat. But in terms of just strictly heat, I don't think it's that big of a deal, in all honesty. I mean, there's no breeze going through Columbia. I don't think there ever has been. So, with that said, they're just going to have to rely on the hydration that they have on the sideline to keep them cool and keep them ready to keep going. So cramping may be an issue at times, but at the same time, I don't give anybody an edge in the heat.
I was pretty impressed with Georgia's performance last week, and I know they blowed out someone, and you shouldn't be impressed by a blowout and everything like that, but I just paid attention to the first couple of series with offense and defense, and it seems like they haven't missed a beat. I know South Carolina is pretty hungry going into this game, and a lot of people speculate that they are not going to use Justin Fields as much in this game. How do you feel about all those things?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Justin Fields, if he's used in it, he'll be used sparingly, a lot less than he was last week against Austin Peay. Georgia has a good opportunity along the line to set the tone for the game, especially against South Carolina's defensive line. And then offensive line will be very interesting because Georgia's kind of young on their defensive line. But overall, I think Georgia's offensive line should have a pretty good game. In terms of blocking, I think they'll be all right. I honestly think this game for Georgia is not necessarily going to come down to the running game. I think it's going to come down more to the passing game. You saw a lot last week against Austin Peay where Jake Fromm was throwing to not only just wide receivers, but a lot of passes out in the flats to the running back. He didn't really have many passes downfield. Now, that's not to say that he can't do it.
Right,
he certainly
right.
can. He put on a clinic last year against some teams, and that Rose Bowl, I mean, he could almost do no wrong. So I think Georgia's going to have a lot of success in the passing game. Against Austin Peay, they did not start their two best wide receivers. They did not start Terry Godwin. He didn't even play at all. And They did not start Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman did play. He got his touches, and he had a big touchdown run or catch and run. But other than that, it was mostly Riley Ridley and Akil Crumpton taking a lot of the reps at wide receiver. And so I think, Godwin's been kind of nursing a small injury. So I think he was very taken out of last week just to make sure he's ready for Saturday against the Gamecocks. And I think the same thing with Mecole Hardman. I think he was limited also just because, they want to get him some playing time against Austin Peay, but they also want him to be totally fresh for South Carolina. Austin Peay was a team Georgia should have beaten. It was a team they knew they were going to beat. It was a team that you can literally say, all right, we know we're going to beat these guys. We just got to go out there and take care of business, but we don't want to get anybody hurt. Georgia also ran only a 10-minute clock in the fourth quarter. So that goes back, to the point of, they were kind of being very conservative with playing time of some guys. They didn't give a lot of guys a whole lot of playing time, probably for a reason why they want to keep them healthy for the bigger fish to fry, which is this week, or the bigger chickens to cook. So.
There you go. You had to throw that in there, didn't you?
Well, I mean, it's just, I guess a punter and idiom, play on words.
Right.
South Carolina fans, I mean, they are talking up a storm on the internet and on the Twitter sphere right now. And so it reminds me a lot of, if I give an NFL comparison, the way that Bills fans talk about the Patriots game every year.
Absolutely. That's a great comparison.
It's kind of like, it doesn't matter how many tables you destroy in the parking lot. Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and Rob Gronkowski will still shred your defense to pieces, and you will still lose 34-17. To me, it's kind of like in this game, I feel like, if Carolina fans can talk all they want to, Georgia is still the more talented team, and I think Georgia will win this game. So.
Well, they're a 73.3 favorite on ESPN.com. A lot of scores that I've seen have been around the 23 to 20. Georgia comes out with 23 points, and South Carolina only scores 24 points. If you had to put a point spread out there or just a score prediction, what would it be?
I think, Alex, you reversed that. I think you said Georgia wins 24-23. Correct?
I meant 31-24. My bad. I'm sorry.
31-24. Okay, gotcha. I think, the spread right now is, depending on which line you look at, depending on which Vegas sportsbook you're talking to, is anywhere from 9 to 10 points. Georgia, when it's been a double-digit favorite in this game, historically within the past 20 years, has done very well and has won usually outright, straight up. Take the points, take the dogs in this. And, for the most part in the past 20 years, Georgia has been the favorite team and the better team overall in this series. Now, Carolina has gotten its upsets here and there. Carolina has beaten Georgia at times. But granted, that was with Steve Spurrier. And now Will Muschamp is a good coach. He does have a lot of good things going on in Columbia. He does have he does have the best team that he's had in Columbia since he's been there this year. But I still think when I saw the line at the beginning of the week at 9.5, I thought that was very high given the stakes of, what's at stake here. First place in the East, sole possession of the SEC East in what could be the big SEC East deciding game, kind of like the de facto SEC East championship. It's still way too early in the season for all that talk, but at the same time, there is a lot at stake here going into this game. And just with the depth that Georgia has, and when Vegas put out that line, and Vegas is that confident in a team playing on the road in a pretty hostile environment, against a pretty good upstart, upbeat team like South Carolina, when Vegas puts it almost at 10 points, to me it's almost kind of like, it's almost just like too good of money to not bet on it. So history says when Georgia's favored this big, take the dogs. I'm also taking history. I don't care if it's in Columbia. I don't care if it's in Athens. I don't care if it's in the Dome. I don't care if it's in a parking lot, in Knoxville, Tennessee, or wherever. I'm taking the dogs, and I got Georgia winning, and I had it in my article that came out today on the Fan Favorite Fan website.
Yes, you did.
I got Georgia 34-23, winning by 11. Take the points. Take the dogs. I think it'll be close in the beginning, but Georgia has done a great job, and this is the last point I'm going to make about it. Georgia's done a great job at making halftime adjustments. The only time they haven't was the national championship. Alabama last year is a nautical mile ahead of South Carolina's team this year. So even halftime adjustments, even if the dogs are down by a touchdown or two, I still take Georgia in the game, even after watching that Rose Bowl from last year. So halftime adjustments, I go with Kirby Smart and his boys. Columbia does not scare them. South Carolina fans, I don't know why they think Columbia is such the hostile of places. Fromm has survived much worse. Fromm
He's played at Tennessee.
So I take the dogs. I take the points. 34-23. That's my prediction going into it. I just don't see how Carolina's going to win this game. I just think if they do, Georgia's going to have to make a ton of mistakes, and South Carolina's going to have to capitalize on almost all of those mistakes. And I just don't see that happening.
One last thing that I've realized with this game, especially played in Columbia, it seems like if the Dogs establish a lead in the first half, then they'll win the game, because the times that they've played in Columbia and they have not established a lead going into halftime, they've lost in Columbia. The last time we were there with Eason, we went into the locker room, I think it was 21-7.
I mean, I could honestly see Georgia almost being down at the half by like a small margin, maybe by like a field goal or so, and then pulling the game out and winning in the end, or pulling away in the second half. I mean, I think Georgia may have if they don't have a lead, I think it may be they don't have a lead early on. Like South Carolina may get the ball first drive all the way down, score. Georgia may get it. Maybe they respond, maybe they don't. But I think in the end, Georgia's just going to, it just comes down to that talent, speed, depth. They have all that. Yeah, South Carolina does have their weapons, but at the same time, they don't have – it's not like Georgia has weapons. Georgia's got weapons all over the field. South Carolina will say, oh, we got 4 running backs. Well, Georgia's got arguably almost 2 All-American running backs.
Right. That isn't Holyfield.
Running backs. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Carolina's got good wide receivers. Deebo Samuel's one of the fastest guys in college football. But at the same time, you're going to have to really stretch the field against Georgia. And the thing is that they did well against Coastal Carolina. They struggled in the beginning, against Coastal Carolina. But at the same time, you're going to have to stretch the field. You can stretch the field on Coastal Carolina. You can only stretch the field so much on Georgia before they just beat you at it.
Right, absolutely. Well, thank you, David, for coming on the show today, even though it was a brief time that we had.
Yeah, sure.
Talk about your latest articles that you put out, because I noticed you put out a couple this week, and you were just on it during the weekend. So we definitely appreciate that here at Fans Favorite Fan. And also, where can we reach you out on social media?
Yeah, Twitter and Instagram are the best. Coach D Berger, Berger. So Coach D Berger on Twitter and Instagram. That's the best place to find me.
All right. Well, thank you, David, for being on the show.
Yeah, sure thing, man.
Well, now we just want to get out of here, and we just want to thank Anfernee Patterson for joining the show today, talking Falcons and Eagles. We want to thank Bill Bender, David Berger, and we just want to now give it out to you guys, the fans, because the keyword in ATL Fan Podcast is the fan. So we want to make this show interactive for you. Hopefully this is a discussion on college football that you enjoyed here on Football Friday. And I'm glad we're to the point now where we're seeing live football after Friday's show, and so we definitely are glad that you guys could join us today. If you are listening to us on Friday or going to the game, glad that we could be there with you on your journey, wherever that may be. Now, go check out fansfavoritefan.com. You're not going to be disappointed. We've got a lot of great articles about the week 2 in college football and the NFL, and but we need your help now. So wherever you see the podcast on Fans Favorite Fan social media, be sure to hit that like button, because that like button goes further, faster in this internet age. And be sure to write something in the comment section if you have an opinion about a certain thing, or a question for Bill, or a question for David, or something that you just want to get off your chest and you want to rant and rave about it. We would definitely appreciate that, hearing your opinion. So no opinion is wrong here on Fans Favorite Fan. So definitely would love to hear from you guys, and definitely need your help in that aspect with promoting the show. Subscribe to the Podbeam account so that way you can get an update on the next episode of the ATL Fan Podcast. And we're going to see you at the beginning of the week, recapping the weekend, which should be an exciting one in college football. So you guys take care, and good luck this weekend. Take care of yourself. Fans Favorite Fan, ATL Fan Podcast, episode 81.